It is 6 p.m. on October 8th, 2024. I will call this meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the Town of Sterling to order. We'll take the roll call, please.
Matt Campobasso, present.
Everett Pierce, present.
Patrick Fox, present.
Joe Curtin, present.
Diana Baldarelli, present.
We'll note that we have a quorum. First item on the agenda is a presentation from Mr. Wallace, the town planner, regarding some proposed amendments to the town's zoning bylaw. So, Mr. Wallace?
Pat, do you mind if I pull up the chair?
Go right ahead.
We'll have a discussion. Okay, I've met most folks here before, I believe. Some of you stopped by my office and we've had a chat. Planning board and I are embarked on a 3-year effort to update and modernize our zoning bylaw. We're going to do it in-house, and in doing so, we save the town about $150,000 of what you would pay a consultant to do this job. But to do it in-house, we've got to break it into manageable pieces. So this being a 3-year effort, year 1, we're focused on the economic development aspects of zoning. Next year, we're going to dig into the residential aspects of zoning. And then the 3rd year, we'll tackle whatever's left. Sign bylaw, parking, what have you. We're trying to do zoning amendments differently this time out, and that is get our proposals out there early and make the effort to go around to all the boards, commissions, and committees and solicit their input up front so that we can address concerns and revise our proposals as needed. The worst thing you can do is come up with a zoning amendment at one of your meetings that only a few people attend. You ship it off to town meeting, it shows up on the warrant, and everybody's, what the hell is this? Where did this come from? We don't want that. We want to get our proposals out there early, hear from all the town's boards, commissions, and committees. We're going to have a public forum on Thursday night, November 7th, right across the street at the old town hall, starting at 6:30. So after that, by mid-November, I will have hit all the boards, committees, commissions, and the planning board and I will take December and January to talk about what revisions we'd like to make. At that point, we'll finalize our proposals. In February, we'll have a couple more public forums to present the final product. We'll do an evening meeting over at the old town hall. We'll do a Saturday morning. Then have our required public hearing in March, and then it's off to town meeting. So, as I explained to you what the board wants to do and why we want to do it, if you folks have better ideas as to how we can achieve our aims, please tell me. We're not wedded to these proposals. There's more than one way to skin a cat. So if you've got better ideas, we'd love to hear from you. We've got 8 zoning amendments coming your way. 4 of them were drafted by the planning board. A couple of them we're sponsoring on behalf of the building department. And we've got a couple of them foisted upon us by the state and federal government. We'll get to those at the end here. So with that said, I'm going to cover why we took on economic development as the first order of business in the zoning rewrite. You saw your tax bills this year. You saw quite a bump. And that's going to continue to be the case until you get some new economic development here. to help stabilize your tax base. Towns that have a significant amount of industrial and commercial development, they tend to have lower single-family tax bills, and the year-to-year rise in those tax bills is lower or smaller than those towns that don't have a lot of economic development. How many folks have heard of the cost of community services study? That's something that is performed by institutions of higher learning and civic organizations. It's an attempt to determine how much tax revenue certain land uses bring in versus how much it costs a town to provide services for. And there have been these studies performed all over the U.S., and they all tell us this thing. Economic development brings in more taxes than it costs to service. In Sterling's case, there was a cost of community service study done back in 2009 by the American Farmland Trust. And I'm going to leave this with you here, and I'll send it to Pat so he can send it around. But in Sterling's case, for every dollar generated by economic development, it costs the town 26 cents to service. Now compare that to residential development, where every tax dollar generated by residential development costs the town $1.09 to service.
Doesn't that depend to a certain extent, though, on the nature of the commercial development? I mean, the assumption is that if you have some commercial development in the town, that in effect is going to lower the taxes across the board. That may be true in some types of development. There might be other types of commercial development that place a burden on the town. I can't give you a particular example, but I mean, is it fair to assume that every commercial development is going to be a tax benefit to the town?
Well, I can't say that on every single type of commercial development,
right,
but the results are clear from the various studies done for various communities. We've got about 40 New England communities that they've done this study for. We could rerun the numbers for Sterling today, and it's only going to change a few cents here and a few cents there.
And that was a point. I went to your presentation at the town hall a number of months ago, and it seems as though using 2009 data is pretty stale, and a lot of things have happened, not necessarily in Sterling, but also in Sterling. But the data that was presented there just would beg the question. And I'd also say that isn't just commercial. I happen to live in a residential area where we are no burden to the town, with the exception of trash collection. So, I mean, let's be clear, okay, there are those types of developments, residential developments, gated communities, that pose much less of a demand on municipal services. So my only comment, my main comment is, I think the data really needs to be current. 2009 is a long time ago.
I cite it simply because it's a Sterling-specific study. But you're going to see from the various studies done in various time periods, the results are the same across all the communities. Economic development brings in more in taxes than it does.
I don't doubt that. But I think using, 15, 18-year-old data in this day and age is probably not a good idea.
Well, again, we could have these folks repeat this exercise. It's only going to change a few cents here on either side. So, in any event, let's move on to the zoning amendments. The first one is doing away with the performance zone and the 13 pages of regulations in your zoning that govern it. The regulations are confusing and contradictory. If I don't understand it and the building department doesn't understand it, how can we advise people on how to use that bylaw? It's been on the books for 30 years, and the proof that it hasn't been used very much is what's there or what's not there in the performance zone right now. So the performance zone right now is 22 parcels. It's 83 acres in size. There are still about 25 acres available, vacant land available for development, and it represents the town's most immediate opportunity for economic development.
I interrupt a minute, Stephen, because I visited you at the office and you showed me the map of the area, but just for the benefit of board members, do you have a copy of it?
Yeah, right here.
Oh, right, there it is, okay.
This is the performance zone.
Yep.
This is Redemption Rock Trail 140. There's Leg Road here. Go down past into West Boylston, and there's the interchange for I-190.
Yeah, so the northern border is on, is that Clements Ave?
Just shy of Clements Avenue. This is the nursing home.
Crystal.
This is the greenhouse. There's the cemetery. Now, we're proposing that we treat this district just like any other zoning district in town, and that's simply enumerating the uses that are allowed there in the table of uses and the dimensional requirements in the table of dimensional requirements.
So the western boundary is Route 12? I'm sorry, 140, I meant to say.
140. Yes, this is 140 right here.
Yep, okay.
That's Leg Road. There's the greenery right there.
Because everything to the other side is all MDC property, correct?
Over here?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And in fact, DCR owns 2 properties here. We're proposing to pull out 3 properties that are never going to get developed. The 2 DCR properties down here and the cemetery. Apparently, the last time the planning board tried to rezone this area, people were concerned that the cemetery was going to get developed, even though no matter how you zone a cemetery, it's permanently protected land. That's going to be a hang-up. We take it out of the district, not a problem.
Is it conservation, again, to the left of 140?
Yes.
That's conservation land?
Yes.
All DCR.
The whole length?
Well, a lot of it is owned by DCR. I don't know off the top of my head the ownership of every parcel over here.
Some of the parcels, I think, in the beginning are residential, and then, but the big chunk of land.
These are probably residential lots.
Yeah,
These are
some of
probably
them, but the bigger
residential
part in
lots.
the back is all DCR.
Yeah.
How many houses are currently on the, I guess, the easterly side of 140 that would be included in this district? There are single-family homes there, right?
1, 2, and 3.
That's it?
That's it. So in terms of the uses we're proposing, those came out of the Economic Development Forum we had in March, when people told us what they wanted out there. What they don't want is a strip commercial like you see in Route 9 in Shrewsbury. So it's not going to be fast food or gas stations or drive-throughs. A lot of it is geared towards Sterling's rural character. I'll go through a few of the uses if you bear with me here. A food cooperative, farming cooperative, craft cooperative with products grown or manufactured on-site or off-premises, restaurant service with or without outdoor patio seating, antique shops, a brewery with a retail component, studio for arts and handcrafts, artisanal manufacturing, printing, binding, publishing, and related arts and trades. So we think that makes a lot more sense than the 13 pages of gobbledygook that currently govern that district.
Maybe in terms of your presentation, you said there's 8 proposals here. Maybe we'll take them one at a time, if that's agreeable. I don't know. Have you finished your
With
comment
this one,
on
yes.
this one? Comments, questions on?
Are you going to talk about the setback requirements for this, or is that in another item?
They're the same as the commercial district. You want me to read those for you?
No, I have it in front of me.
We did add a footnote for the dimensional table that lot zone for commercial or light industrial shall maintain a 20-foot non-disturbed vegetated buffer along property lines that abut residential zoning districts. During site plan approval process, the planning board may require supplemental landscaping and/or screening when those lots get developed.
Did this get put in because it was supposed to be, when Barletta was going to do a racetrack, it was going to be a horse racing track, so this was the answer to the years, and they just, that's about 30 years ago. That's what they implemented these crazy things just so nobody could do anything over there.
Yeah,
That's what
I mean,
Is that the
that's
genesis
what
of
it
it?
was like they were going to put a race, it was like Barletta was going to
be
put
a
a horse
racetrack
racing track there. The town went ballistic, and then they, in response to that, did that, and in the meantime, the DCR bought, whatever we have, the other land that was there, it was Christoph Pig Farm was over there.
Right.
I mean,
So that was the reaction to that, so now you can't do anything on that.
I mean, I think I do agree that the language and the performance, about performance zone in the bylaws is almost indecipherable. So I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at it, but it's very dense, complicated language. So it would be helpful to streamline that and simplify it, to be sure.
Okay.
Other comments?
So does this just become the commercial zone, or is it kind of a limited commercial with?
It's a commercial district, but it has its own set of uses that go with it that I've outlined in the table here. Yeah.
I mean,
That would, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, the opportunity is outlined in that. I mean, what is this really buying the town? There's not that many uses available that you just read off.
Well, there are more than what I read.
Oh,
I
there
could
are.
spend all night going.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I just read the new uses that we've added.
Oh, I
So
see.
you've got your uses that are typically allowed in the commercial
It's
district.
that plus those.
Okay.
So you can add the commercial uses that we allow in our
I
commercial district.
didn't realize it was in addition to. Okay.
Now, are any of these proposed uses allowed as of right, or do they would all require a decision by a permit granting authority?
They're all, let's see here. They're all by right, meaning that they would need site plan approval.
Do you have those there?
Yep. This is which is here.
Yeah, but where does it start, right? Well, I mean, I would, and you're not, I think we discussed this before, and you're not seeking the board's formal endorsement, you're
I'm
making a
briefing you on
presentation.
this. You guys can talk about it amongst yourselves if you want to get back to me with your questions or your input.
Yeah.
I would need it by the middle of, probably by the end of November.
Well, one concern I think I would have is if all of these uses are by right, that, to my mind, presents a problem because the town, through its agencies or boards, would have no input on that.
No, that's not true.
Well, if they're
Site plan
upright.
review, every department gets a copy of the site plan and reviews it and provides comment.
But what about the public?
The public can attend the public routinely attends site plan meetings and gives their input. And the board takes that under consideration. It often results in the conditions the board imposes on the site plan.
It would be no different than a commercial zone where you pull it. And it's a commercial zone that's right by the highway, so that people are going to get their
No,
car.
except in a commercial zone, generally speaking, an applicant would come for a permit, and that the proposed commercial enterprise may be allowed or it may not be allowed by the permit granting authority.
If it's a special permit, but if it's by right, if you go to the table of uses and it says commercial, yes, they wouldn't have to come to us. It would only be under special permitting.
They come to us for site
They would
plan.
go site plan, but for us to come to the zoning board of appeals, it would only be in the table if it's a SP.
Yeah, I agree that if in the table of uses it is by right, then that's the
Correct.
end of the story, so to speak. But I'm raising the issue as to whether that is a good thing to do, whether it should all be by right or whether there should be some sort of review by a permit granting authority beforehand.
But isn't it, just say, if you go up on Route 12 at the roundabout, and somebody wants to put a gas station at the oldest, and or whatever, or a store, and you go to the table of uses and it's commercial, and it's a yes, it'd be no different than that. Why would we want to?
If it's, but it would still require an application for a special permit.
If it's a yes, only if it's SP in the table.
Right.
So if the new table matches the existing commercial uses, it's no different than any commercial use we have. The only difference is in the performance zone, a lot of the things were not by right because they didn't want anything to go there. Correct, you have to go to the planning board, but if you go to the table of uses, say in commercial, yes. So if it's a restaurant, it would be yes. If it's a drive-in, it would be a special permit. If it's fast food, it would be a special permit. As long as this table.
I understand.
Correct.
That's the point. So, but the proposal Mr. Wallace is making is that every single one of these possible commercial enterprises would be as of right. None of them would require a special permit. In our table of uses, it depends on what commercial use you're talking about or what industrial use you're talking about. Some are as of right and some require a permit. And my concern as a threshold matter is whether all of these uses should be as of right. So that's an issue.
Right, exactly. So when the site plan comes in, it gets distributed to every department. Fire, police, building, conservation, lighting, DPW, Board of Health. So Conservation Commission sees what's coming through for site plan. So does Board of Health. I send the site plans to Patty. If you folks want to weigh in and give us your opinion on site plans, you are more than welcome to do so.
So Steve, my question is, because I haven't sat down and compared the two, so in the performance zone, you had said that it's going to be the same commercial, it's going to mirror the same commercial uses that we have in the current bylaw, plus the additional uses that you said.
Correct.
But are we getting rid of the ones that require a special permit, or are they going to be the same? If you're just mirroring it, if you're just copying what we have, mirroring that, and then adding those other uses, whether by right or special
Yeah, well,
permits.
it'll depend on the use. You're going to have to look at all of them.
I'd have to compare, but
You're going to have to compare them.
But the Pat's thing, if you kept it the same, it would keep the commercial the same, and if there's ones you want to tweak, or I think
Well,
Pat's concerned that we're just going to open them all
Well,
up.
we probably move some special permits into by right. So you'll want to look at that and give us your feedback on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and you said it, I think, better than I did, Joe, but I mean, if you were simply transposing to this what do you call it, gateway enterprise zone?
Gateway Enterprise District.
Okay. Simply transposing those uses from what we now have in the table of uses, so that some would be as of right and some would require a permit. I guess I have less of a concern about that, but what I thought you were saying is that all of them would be lumped into the by right
Well,
category, as opposed to,
Not having a photographic memory, I'd have to go through there and point them out to you which ones we're changing from special permit to by right, but it's not many of them.
okay.
To
well,
a large
misunderstood.
extent, we're mirroring what you allow in your commercial.
I think it would be helpful to have a list of those that will be by right or those that will be special permit. We don't need that tonight, but something for discussion.
It's right in here. You'll be able to take a look at commercial.
So
Commercial's the third column, and
wait,
the
I may
Gateway
have it.
Enterprise District is the last column.
All right, so we got it here
Yeah.
in the print. Okay.
And you said, I think, that some of them were changed from a special permit requirement to a by right category.
Yes, but how many off the top of my head, I don't know. So you'll have to look at that and give it some thought and get back to us.
Is that, then that's a judgment process that you and the planning board went through to make these suggestions that some be as a...
Basically, there's only, well, let's see, I don't see any special permits in the Gateway. They're all either Y or N. So,
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is if there was a particular commercial use that is now included in our table of uses that requires a special permit now, I think I would be less concerned about what you're proposing if in the Gateway Enterprise District it would still require a special permit. If something is as of right in a table of uses and you're simply transposing that to the Gateway District, I'd personally have less concern.
All right, well, talk it over amongst yourselves once you take a good look at this, and if that's your feedback, we'll take it under advisement.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly, personally, again, in favor of eliminating the language from the performance zone and simplifying it and clarifying it. I think that's all, that would be a positive development.
Okay, one other change that's part of this effort right here is removing residential development as a use allowed by right in your commercial districts. Most towns do not allow residential development in their commercial districts. You do in Sterling. The net result is you are slowly eating away all your commercially zoned land with residential development. Of the parcels that fall within your commercial district, right now we've got 42% of them used for residential purposes. So as you slowly eat that up with residential development, if you want new commercial development, you're going to have to come up with rezoning different areas.
Okay. All right, I'm just concerned about our timing here, so why don't we move on to some of the other proposals?
Okay, we covered that one. So the other one from the planning board is intended to streamline the permitting process. Right now, if a business requires a special permit with you folks and site plan approval with the planning board, they're often spending 3 months getting their special permit with you folks, another 3 months with site plan approval from the planning board, and as we've seen, there's been a couple instances where the conditions that you folks impose on your special permit conflict with what the planning board puts as conditions on their site plan. What we're proposing is to make this a one-stop permitting system so that anything that requires both special permit and site plan review, the planning board handles both. So they do it concurrently. It's one-stop shopping. And we did talk with town council, and we found that a lot of towns do it this way. And they seem to think, town council seems to think it would streamline the permit process and do away with the possibility of conflicting provisions. I know in talking with Pat that he's concerned about that, and I'm sure he'll elaborate why. But there are other ways to do this. I don't particularly care who handles the permitting in this regard, whether it's the planning board or you folks. But I think that one board should be responsible for both permits. There are towns out there where zoning board, as the special permit granting authority, they approve the site plan at the same time. I can give you examples of that. I'll also give you examples of where the planning board handles both. We think that makes sense. Maybe you think about it, if you folks want to take on site plan review as part of your special permit, I would be glad to coordinate the departmental review process on your behalf. Whatever engineering consultant you need to bring in to look at the plans, be willing to do that too. Another option would be just having those projects, those economic development projects that require both special permit and site plan come over to the board, or you folks can handle it one-stop shopping. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to achieve here, which is streamlined permitting, not tying up a new business for 6 months in the permitting process. If you've got a better way to handle it, be glad to hear it.
I think I can pretty much guarantee you that this board doesn't want to take on site plan review, but I might be mistaken.
If I
Make the motion if you'd like.
But here's and this is something you and I have talked about on a few occasions, and here's the concern I have with proposal number 2, and it also relates to, I think, to proposal number 3. You're making a proposal in good faith to promote economic development. You've presented that to the planning board. I gather the planning board has signed on to that. So there's an impetus here to fast track commercial or industrial development. My concern is that if the planning board is going to be focused on facilitating commercial development, it's difficult for it to also be an independent, objective permit granting authority, because that permit granting authority is going to be focused, I think, on economic development and promoting it and, if you will, fast tracking it. There are other concerns in town, the abutters, people who live in the immediate area, or anyone in the town who may have a concern about a particular type of commercial enterprise or a particular type of industrial enterprise. So in my view, it is better to have a board that is hopefully independent and objective, making the threshold determination whether this use should be permitted in the town of Sterling. And I just think it's going to be difficult for the planning board to wear 2 hats, to be the promoter of economic development and the independent permit granting authority deciding what's in the best interest of the town of Sterling.
Promoting versus fast track or streamlining the permitting process, that's a judgment that, you made, I've made. But we're still going to hear from abutters like we do with site plans. We're still going to come up with conditions of approval that try to address legitimate abutter concerns. We're still going to use the same special permit granting, the same special permit criteria when evaluating whether a use is appropriate for that particular site or not. So,
I guess my concern, Stephen, is that the interests of other parties, other than the person or the entity applying for the special permit, which oftentimes is someone, let's be frank, outside the town of Sterling. It could be someone within the town, but more likely than not, it is someone who's coming in with a proposal for a commercial enterprise or an industrial operation. And that's fine, that's all well and good. But if you have a board that's committed to promoting economic development, I'm just concerned that the interests of other parties, abutters, residents, may get lost in the shuffle, so to speak.
If I could, I would second that. I happen to fall into the same camp as Pat. And if I recall correctly, the night that we did meet with the town council, she suggested that we could require that a site plan be obtained before coming before the zoning board of appeals. Now, you're sitting here suggesting that this whole process takes 6 months. I fail to see how that happens. Or if it does, then there's obviously a lot of opportunity to streamline the existing process if it's taking 6 months to do that. It should not.
Someone looking to start a business is not going to make the investment in the engineering for a site plan if they think that they're going to have their special permit denied.
But one question I have. So I'm all for streamlining because trust me, I didn't get paid $125,000, but I did do the groundwater thing that was all messed up and whatever, and took a lot of grief for it to try and that was the epitome of the process not being streamlined, where you had to go to the Conservation Commission, to the zoning board, to the thing, and then we found out it was written incorrectly, and we cleaned it up, tried to get more to the planning board, and get the zoning board out of it, got the conservation out of it, goes to the right channel. My question is, though, how will it streamline it if they don't want to do the site plan and they still have to go to you for the special permit? Do you know what I mean? It's not going to be, you could do them concurrently as you speak now. You could come here for your special permit while they go to planning board for site plan review, but they don't know whether it's going to go or not. So if they're going to you for a streamlined process for a special permit, and they're not going to do the site plan, what's the difference?
We would require them that when they file for their special permit, that they apply for their site plan as well.
Well, we could do the same thing as a zoning board of appeals. Before you come before us, apply for a site plan.
Or do it at the same time.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
That's what we're saying. You just flip it around. Why change it? I mean, we can accomplish the same thing without taking that responsibility. I agree with Pat. As we sit here behind this table, we represent a lot of different interests when it comes to these petitions to come before us. And I think one of probably the most underserved is the citizens of this town. And they want to be heard, and they want to be heard in an impartial way. And I try to put my planning hat on, and if I'm sitting on the planning board and I'm really interested in economic development, which way am I going to go? If I'm on the fence, which way am I going to go? I'm going to go economic development way. I'd like to think that we're much more impartial and we listen better.
Okay, that's a fair point. But I think your board and our board, what we do, it's a balancing act between the developer's interest, the abutter's interest, and the town's interest.
To the law and what they're allowed to do. Because a lot of times what they're allowed to do and what people think they can't.
With the town's interest taking primacy. So that's how I see our planning board role and the zoning board.
It's always the appeal, the right to appeal is still there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So
Why don't we
that's
move on, I think, because we're
yeah.
going to be spending quite a bit of time.
The third zoning proposal, which I know you're going to like because it's moving the special permit granting authority over to the planning board for multifamily housing, and that's simply because it requires site plan review. Just so you know, I've applied for a grant with the state to have the state's leading expert on open space cluster developments come in and help us next year rewrite our multifamily housing bylaw. Our multifamily housing bylaw with its open space requirements, it is a de facto cluster housing subdivision. I know you folks aren't exactly happy with it. The planning board isn't exactly happy with it. So if we get this grant and have that expert come in to help us rewrite that bylaw, we would want to have you folks participate in that effort.
Okay.
All right.
I have a similar concern on number 3 that I had on number 2, in terms of having the planning board and let's just be frank in terms of the way the planning board is structured, and I don't mean this in a critical fashion, but the chairman is a developer. I think maybe another member of the board may be a developer, I'm not sure. But if there's, as in number 2, if there's a mindset to focus on economic development, in number 3, is there going to be a mindset to promote multifamily housing developments? And I have a similar concern there. I think the permit granting authority should be as independent and as objective as possible in determining whether the town should have a multifamily housing project. And I just think that threshold determination is better accomplished by this board than by the planning board.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the...
Other questions, concerns? Did you want to say something, sir?
Jim Patio, 3 Terra Lane. I'm chairman of the Economic Development Committee. If you want someone, a committee that's biased in favor of economic development, see us. The planning board is not, or does not have that bias. We're the ones who want to promote an economic development in this town for the reasons to help mitigate the tax rate. That's our whole reason for being. So if you want to say who's biased with it, it's members of my committee. That's what we are asked to do for the town. So far as Kyle Carini, you mentioned his name as a developer. I've known Kyle Carini for many years. He builds houses. He does not bring in businesses. And I'd like the board here to understand that. So when you make your decisions about economic biases, put it where it belongs, on my committee, please.
Thank you, sir. It was not my intent to be critical of the chairman or anyone else on the planning board. I simply stated what his occupation is, and that's a fact.
But his houses, not industry, not commercial. He's not bringing in restaurants. He's not bringing in...
No, but I understand that, but we're talking about proposal number 3, which is multifamily housing.
Yes, but that's also mandated by the state, or it's coming that way through their, I forget the...
Yeah, we're going to get to that one.
Yeah.
MBTA Act.
Yeah. And just to be clear, I certainly don't intend, I don't think any member of the board intends to convey the idea that this board is opposed to economic development per se. It's just a question of how it is addressed when an application comes before the town. That's all we're saying. We're not saying that, if a proposal for economic development or commercial development came before the zoning board, there would be a reverse bias, if you will, and it would be automatically turned down. We're simply saying that they should be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Some proposals for commercial industrial development may be very beneficial to the town. There may be others that aren't. And they should be, I think, should be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. That's all we're
You guys
saying.
should do a better job of getting, we haven't had that many in front of us, to tell you the truth. Most of them are landscapers and warehouses. Little tiny landscaper yards and warehouses, that's what we get. So
Fence companies.
to say, we don't turn them away. We just don't get many, so you guys gotta kick it up a couple notches.
Yeah.
We're trying to bring in the types of businesses the town wants, as opposed to a business comes in because something's available. Then we have no control of, no choice as to who is occupying and doing business on that property. It's not easy.
Okay, so
I can tell you, being on the light board and being the chairman of the light board, we get a lot of times on the forefront of big industrial, commercial, and a lot of them don't materialize because the town doesn't have sewer or available space or too many resources. So there's a lot of parameters that restrict the
Yeah, we are at a disadvantage in terms of economic development by not having sewer, by having a quarter of the town's land governed by the watershed protection district, and we've got the groundwater protection district.
At one point, there was not, before we changed it, there was not, that you basically couldn't do anything, so.
Yeah, okay. We're not even, okay, we're gonna move on here. The next and the last planning board sponsored zoning amendment is making some revisions to the site plan review section in our zoning bylaw. The site plan review section in our zoning bylaw, it authorizes the planning board to adopt a set of site plan regulations, but they never have. Site plan regulations typically explain the process, what you need to show on your site plan, how it gets reviewed, and it also includes design guidelines for things like landscaping, parking, building facade, screening, lighting, things like that. We don't have those guidelines right now. So in the past, in terms of what the planning board wanted to see in terms of those topics, it's been largely at the whim of whatever planning board member was sitting on the board at that time. That's not a way to do your site planning. By having a set of site plan regulations that articulate your design guidelines, I found that developers are more than willing to comply with them if they know what they are. So we are reconfiguring the site plan language in the zoning bylaw to move some stuff out of there that should be in your regulations and add some stuff that should be in the bylaw. We've got a draft of site plan regulations that we've been working with a consultant on. They're going to be ready by the end of this month, so people can be able to see, oh, they want to change the zoning, the site plan and zoning this way, and now here's the site plan regulations that go with it, so they'll be able to see what we're doing here. So that's the intent, to come up with a set of regulations that articulate design standards for new development.
Okay. Questions on that proposal? Okay, so go ahead.
Okay, the next two zoning proposals, they're brought to us by the building department. They want to add some definitions that we ought to have in our zoning bylaws definitions section, and revise and clarify some of our existing definitions. That's all we're doing on that one.
Questions? Okay.
The next one, they want to add some verification language to the zoning section that deals with accessory buildings and uses. Just basically clarifying and setting some limits because it has gotten a bit out of hand.
Which proposal is that?
Number 8.
Oh, okay.
Has that got the square footage? I didn't see that in there.
No, the only thing we're adding is there shall be no more than 2 accessory buildings / structures on the same lot. Garages containing 4 or more bays should be considered a commercial use and require a special permit and site plan from planning board.
So the 800 square feet, is that still in there?
That's-
The ADUs, yeah.
That's under the
Yeah, that's
ADU,
under-
yeah.
Okay,
That's
all
under
right. All right, thank you.
In terms of the ADUs, as you're well aware, that the state has enacted a law that's going to require the town to make some adjustments. I think hopefully all the board members are aware of that. That statute has been enacted and that will
They don't know how
impact.
to administer it yet.
That'll
They
be,
don't know how, the state's having issues administering it because they don't know what the definitions are yet, but other than that, it's fine.
But the town is going to have to amend its ADU
Yeah.
bylaw.
yes.
So we
because
cover
of
the
that
accessory
state law.
structure. We have
So that's going to be
back up.
zoning amendment number 9. Our current ADU bylaw is with town council right now. They are going to review and suggest some changes. I should have those by the end of the month, and when I do, I'll get them over to you folks so you can look them over as well.
All right.
The next zoning proposal, this one comes to us from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. FEMA is updating our flood rate insurance maps, and those will be issued in December of this year. Our last set of flood rate insurance maps are from 1982. In order for Sterling to stay in the flood insurance program and use those maps, they require us to adopt some revisions to our floodplain zoning. Now, I've made those changes. They've been signed off on by FEMA and MEMA, Massachusetts Emergency Management, and Town Council. So I'd rather not change this bylaw unless you've got a real issue with it. It's still the Conservation Commission that will be the administering the bylaw, so that hasn't changed.
Okay.
And last but not least, the gift that keeps on giving, MBTA zoning. Everybody know about the MBTA Communities Act from 3 years ago? Where they require all MBTA and MBTA adjacent communities to create a multifamily overlay district where multifamily housing is allowed by right. Sterling is considered a an MBTA adjacent community simply because we abut Leominster. Even though the train station for Leominster is in the north of town, and it's still a 10-mile drive for anyone in Sterling to get there.
Isn't it 15 units an acre or something?
We're gonna get to that. Yeah, they give us a number of how many units we need to zone for. Sterling's number is 156 units. Did the legislature, in their wisdom, make any exceptions for towns that don't have the infrastructure to support that amount of housing? They give you a bylaw that tells you what needs to be in it, and all you can change is the dimensional requirements. The one requirement you can't change, you've got to allow 15 units per acre. You can't make that work in a town without municipal sewer. Now, our initial proposal was to have the MBTA district over where the Northgate housing is, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the closest area of town to a sewer line, Leominster sewer line, which services the Northgate housing. Unfortunately, the land over there can only be accessed by a road that's technically located in Leominster. So they wouldn't let us put the district over there. So in my conversation with the state, I said, wait a minute. Rather than put it in the most practical area where this is likely to come to fruition, you would rather have us theoretically zone some land out in the middle of nowhere with no sewer that can theoretically have 15 units per acre. And the answer was yeah. As a practical matter, without municipal sewer, it's Title V that's going to govern how many units are going to go in. As a practical matter, if you're using Title V septic regulations, you're not going to get more than 4 units per acre. So we're not going to get 15 units per acre without municipal sewer. And the area that we've chosen isn't going to have municipal sewer anytime soon. We were approached by a landowner in the very northeast corner of town who was willing to have their land rezoned. We didn't want to rezone an area of land without the landowner's permission. We went up and down North Row Road, talked with all the landowners there, because you could get a sewer line from there down to, none of them were interested. And we're not going to put this on somebody's property who doesn't want it. So, the area we're proposing is 60 acres over here, in the very corner of town at the end of Ford Road. There used to be an old Boy Scout camp up there, or there may still be. In terms of the district, I thought I had a blow up of the district. Yeah, it's 60 acres. I know that the landowner plans to create 2 10-acre estate lots out of there, so that leaves 40 acres. One of the dimensional requirements of our bylaw is that 75% of that land be set aside as permanently protected open space. So if we're talking 40 acres, and 3/4 of it needs to be set aside as permanently protected open space, we're talking 10 acres. 10 acres times what you could get for Title V, which is 4 units per acre, we're looking at about 40 units per acre. Now, this is very complicated. I don't know how I'm going to explain this at town meeting in a way that people can understand.
Good luck.
That's why you pay me the big bucks. I think we all recognize that this is going to be a difficult proposal to get passed. But I've been a planner for 35 years. This is not the first unfunded state mandate that's come down the pipe. My philosophy is if the town fathers want to comply with the bylaw, my job is to make it as easy and as painless as possible. I think we've done that with this particular location. It's at the end of the road, tucked in the corner of town. You're still going to have a good 30 acres protected out of that area, and there's easy access to I-190. So questions on that?
I mean, to a certain extent, maybe to a large extent, this is something beyond, out of our control, really, right?
Well, if we don't pass this, then Sterling is no longer eligible for a variety of housing and infrastructure grants. I know DPW has some infrastructure projects down the road that are going to be quite expensive, and they certainly are counting on state infrastructure grants to help pay for it.
Wasn't Milton didn't pass it?
Milton's fighting JC right now.
Holden Sewing or whatever.
Right, Milton and Holden, and if you don't comply, the state's going to sue you.
Yeah.
It just, my only thought on that land there, it has the potential for how many units, 40?
If
Under
we're
Title
using
V.
Title V, yeah, 40.
That kind of traffic on Ford Road and Flanagan Hill Road, you're talking some infrastructure improvements there just to accommodate that. And it's probably very difficult to find a parcel of land, but boy, that's about as remote as you're going to find, and requiring a lot of attention when it comes to vehicles. Man.
Yeah, DPW is going to need to be involved and do some upgrades to that road if something comes in.
Is there a requirement that some or all or some portion of these units are affordable as the state defines it?
And there's no requirement that they get built either. We just have to zone for it.
The being is that if you're putting 15 units per acre on there, that they would technically be affordable. That's what because in the city, that's what they're not even technically affordable, but they're putting 15 everywhere you go down where they just did the 3 left.
The legislature,
Could be.
the legislators that put this together are pretty much in the I-495 corridor where they all have MBTA stations, and the demand for land and multifamily housing is high.
Yeah, but they
Hopefully
could be
they'll
market rate
prevail.
though, too.
I don't, it's going to be a hard sell at town meeting, I know that, but
Are there any other questions? Any other questions from Mr. Wallace?
Well said. Thank you for your time.
Stephen, thank you for the presentation, all the work you did on it.
Appreciate that.
What's that? Yes, sure.
Somewhat of a question, somewhat of a statement. I hope nobody looks at this as poking the hornet's nest. Mike Temple, 12 Bean Road, member of the planning board. One, the planning board is not a monolithic 5-person board that signs off on everything. I have some serious concerns about parts of these, as have been voiced in the past. About one example, one which I'm pretty adamant about, is it taking away people's right to own commercial property to then develop it as residential. I feel that we should not be taking away someone's rights because we're looking at having the town having primacy. To me, the property owner can decide that, and if you look at this town with 42% of our commercial property being developed residential, there is a demand there, and it does make sense in certain areas. The second part is my own opinion. The reason why what we're getting for commercial here is, one, lack of infrastructure, and two, the reason we're going to continue getting lower end, not high-end commercial properties is that it's cheap. So the smaller companies can still afford to build in this town as compared to going to Leominster and paying triple or quadruple what they're paying here. So I understand what we're going to get for economic development, but at the same time, my own opinion on all of this is we're all hired or voted in to do a job. That's the will of the people. Not the will of the town, not the will of Boston, whatever you want to put it. They do come in conflict. Part of that becomes town meeting, but part of that is also what we're doing now, which is discuss new proposals. I do believe the commercial part of this needs to be done. It's part of our plan, as residential will be done the year after. Just one point number 3 that he's brought up about special permit for multifamily to planning board. Maybe that's better served when we do the residential development as compared to the vast majority of this, which is commercial development. Okay? That's one thing that I would put out publicly now that people should digest, because I would hate to see that people see this entire thing and shoot the entire thing down. There's some great ideas in there. There's a lot of thought has been put in. Simple things like some of the definitions in there. We have no noise regulations in our own regulations of bylaws. There's a state one. Try finding it. It took me 2 days. It's exactly what's going to be listed in ours. So a town resident, if they have an issue, or a commercial building, if they have an issue, can simply look to our own definitions. The ZBA and the planning board, either one being removed from the commercial part of the process. I have the same questions that you do on it. How does it work? How does it streamline? Does it actually streamline? Or are we going to have people come with a plan already in place and that's it, it's a yay or nay? I don't know. Okay, I'm operating on the same system here. I'm going to have questions, and it's probably up until the day of our town meeting, which is months away. I understand we need economic development. It helps. At the same time, I think if you ask the vast majority of Sterling residents, how much economic development do you want? They'd say plenty, as long as it's not near me and I don't have to see it and I don't have to listen to it. That's part of what we have to make a balance of. And I think this board does a very good job at that. And I believe the planning board always tries that to take into accommodation, as I have in the past, as the board has in the past. At the same time, I also believe you have more freedom in that based upon the current way that we're designed. Again, just thoughts of a member of the planning board, because the one thing I don't want you to come away from this with is that this thing is a all or nothing. I think there's parts of it that may go to town meeting, such as the gateway, and people will say, great idea, but I don't want these special permits changed. Then break it in half. Change it to the gateway, have a separate article just on the changes to permitting as we've had in the past. It's that sort of idea that may help people understand, hey, we need to do something about this land. Otherwise, it's going to sit and generate no income. It does nobody any good. Instead, we want to generate some income out of it, out of our tax base, and at the same time, not stress our capabilities. However, these are your choices as part number 2 of that. And if the people reject that part, then they're still limited, but at least we're halfway there. Again, this is not a stone throw at what we've done, the planning board, what the town planner has done, what our independent contractor has done. What it is a clarification, I hope, to you and to myself, because the more questions you bring up, the more things I think of that I should also be thinking of to ask for questions. So I appreciate your input in this, and please understand, I know this plan will grow and change, and I think that's where you guys are needed. I think that's where most of our boards are needed, and I just appreciate your time on this. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just mention one thing, Stephen. You said, at the outset, you mentioned that the focus this year, at this year's town meeting, would be commercial enterprises, commercial development. Next year would be residential. So why include number 3 about multifamily housing in this year's package?
Simply because it requires site plan review. Now, if we get that grant to help us rewrite our multifamily housing bylaw, I would suggest to the board that we pull that one and bring in our consultant, the expert on open space developments, have him work with us and you folks to come up with something that we're both happy with.
Okay.
All right. So all of these proposals are on the planning board's webpage, along with the maps that go with them. Think about them. If you've got any questions or comments along the way, you can contact me, give me a call, shoot me an email, stop by the office when you're in town hall. I do ask that you give me your feedback, whether it's individually or as a board, by the end of November.
All right, Mr. Wallace, thank you very much for that very comprehensive presentation. Yeah, okay, sure. We're going to take a very brief recess. We'll resume in just a couple of minutes.
We're going to resume the meeting. The next item on the agenda is a request by the 8 Point Sportsman's Club for renewal of a special permit initially issued on July 6, 1982. So is there someone here from
Charlie
the
Baker,
club?
12 Old Parish Lane, president of the 8 Point Sportsman's Club.
Say your name again, sir. I'm sorry.
Charlie Baker.
Okay. Yes, go ahead. Would you like to
We're just
speak?
requesting an extension of the permit that was initially, as you said, 1982, I believe. I think it's every 2 years that we come for renewal.
Okay.
I will note that we did receive some information from town council, and I'm not sure the information is all that clear or helpful. I don't know what board members want to say about this. This has been going on since 1982. Is there a trailer or a unit there now?
There was one there for our previous caretaker, was there well over 20 years. He's since resigned. We've done a process where we have a new caretaker that we'd like to bring in. He is in the process of getting a new trailer built, and they will not do that without the permit.
So there's nothing on the property now?
Currently, no. And it was a clerical error that it didn't go through prior to its expiration date of July.
When was the trailer removed?
2 years, about a year and a half ago.
I mean, one of the concerns, just to put everything out on the table, is that I don't think there's anything in the table of uses that allows for whatever it is, a trailer. It's a mobile home?
It's a mobile home, correct.
Yeah. Now, for some reason, that was allowed back in 82?
82.
I don't know what the status of our zoning bylaws were back then, but anyways, town council has offered an opinion, if I understand it correctly. I don't know if members have seen it, in which he says that it's probably okay. But it does express some concerns about the fact that the time of the permit expired before you sought a renewal.
Correct, and that was a clerical error. That's fine. We don't have anybody, obviously, that's full-time, and the error was that just the assumption was that we would have received some notification of renewal. And so, in our doing that, I think we followed up shortly after. It was a couple of weeks.
I do recall many years ago when this came up, I think before you were on the board, Mr. Chairman, that there was concern at the time that because the existing mobile home was old and antiquated, which has now been removed.
That has been removed, correct.
There was concerns about it being up to code and everything else and issuing the permit, and then it turned into a big hoo-ha, and we issued the permit. And I think at the time, if I remember correctly, they had the building inspector go over and do a inspection or something.
Every year,
But now if it's going to be
every 2 years, the building inspector, when inspecting the clubhouse, was also inspecting the whatever trailer was on site.
So a building inspector made an inspection every?
I believe annually, yes.
Every year or every 2 years?
I believe every year. Whenever I can't speak specifically. Whenever the clubhouse is inspected, the trailer was done at the same time.
That was part of the thing that went on because it was an issue with, but if it's a new trailer, I don't see the issue. I mean, it's for the caretaker because of the.
I understand. I mean, the only thing that troubles me a little bit is that there's nothing in the table of uses that we've been doing this for, or the board has been doing it for 40 years. Patty, a notice was sent out, right, to, is there anyone present who is here who wishes to be heard on this question? Apparently not.
They'll have guns, are you kidding me?
Is that?
I said, they have guns. The time they came, a whole bunch of them came to the meeting.
I'm going to recuse myself because I'm a member of the 8 Point Sportsman, so.
Thoughts?
It hasn't been an issue, Pat, that for my 20, whatever, almost 20 years on the board, I can't recall, but I know there was one point where we brought it up about the inspections, because it was, the trailer was in like disrepair or something, and now if it's new, it should be okay.
And given that town council is not saying, it's an issue.
He did say, for clarity of enforcement going forward, when the permit term expires, you, the board, may require the permit holder to make a request for extension within a certain period of time. So have these been granted for 2-year slots or 1 year?
2 years.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Make a motion to grant the permit to the East Point Sportsman's Club for the temporary trailer or mobile home on the property.
And would you, based upon what council has said, would you accept a friendly amendment that any request for extension has to be filed before the expiration of the term of the permit? Well, that's what he's suggesting.
Do we really want to, why was it 2 years? It seems like
I was just going to ask that.
pretty frequent.
Does it have to be 2 years?
That's what it was since 1982.
If I can speak to that, I believe several years ago, they tried to extend it to 5 years. And at that time, it was something with the state that wouldn't allow a special permit to be extended any more than 2 years. That may not be true anymore, but I think that's what it was at the time.
2 years ago, we tried to do it indefinitely, but that came up.
There was some rejection, but in other words, the Attorney General's office or some state
That I do
agency
not know.
objected?
I mean, we would certainly like to, as I said, with this new caretaker coming in and spending a significant amount of his own money to purchase a trailer, have some assurances that, we're not going to have to.
Understood. And let me just ask you, sir, have you received complaints from anyone in the area about this mobile home?
No. We often, there's a lot of people that use the facility. We have a lot of people that park in the parking lot during the day and walk up and down Beaman Road. And community organizations we allow to use the facility, and they've all said, where is the trailer? Why is someone not here? Because, well, they felt that it was a comfort knowing that somebody was on site and somebody was there to kind of keep an eye on everything that goes on.
Could we have a motion to allow it for a 2-year period with a designated termination date and the requirement that the applicant file a request for renewal prior to the expiration of the permit date? I think that would be in conformity with what the council is suggesting.
But could we do from 2 to 5 years with that same requirement?
Well, he just indicated that was an issue.
I don't know that. I know it was looked at in the past.
Well, wait, if it was looked at in the past and rejected.
I can't speak to how long ago it was.
Because 2 years ago it would have been us, wouldn't it have been?
No, but I thought you said, Mr. Baker, that it was some agency of the state raised an objection.
It was discussed at some point in front of the appeals board. I don't know. I can't speak to when that was. It could have been 10 years ago.
It was a while ago, but they've missed a couple times. It's not the first time. So I think we're putting in there, it's going to be a moot point because they changed. This is,
So I just took over as president 2 years ago.
President, then there's another president and another one.
There would be a benefit to extending it 5 years because that means probably none of us will be on the board.
There you go.
I like that.
I'm not aware of any restrictions on special permit timeframes.
So let's make it. Why? Because it's missed before, and that's the problem.
That's fine if someone wants to move to make it a 5-year term, but I would still suggest, based on what council said, that there be a requirement, that it be for a end on a certain date. We'll specify what the date is, whether it's 5 years, and that if the applicant wishes to extend it, the applicant must file requests prior to the expiration.
Absolutely.
Of the term.
Change to 5. So my motion with the change to 5 years instead of that, with the expiration date of the issuance of whenever the permit is issued, whatever the date of the permit issuance is, to be renewed. So you guys have to, on your end.
Absolutely.
Renew it with
This will be like the fourth time it's different president.
And just keep in mind that if for some reason there was an oversight or you didn't do it, that could create a problem in terms of renewing it.
Understood.
We probably won't get any notices in the town.
Right. Don't worry, I'm getting a tattoo.
He won't be president at that time.
No, I think it's one of those things you're stuck with.
And is you said that the building inspector inspected it every year?
Yes. Yeah.
Was that written in the
So
terms of
that
private?
was, I can't speak to Tony. I don't think he's looked at the outside of the building. The previous building inspector did go in and do a full inspection on the building.
I think that was.
But was that part of the permit that was granted every 2 years, that there be an inspection?
I think it was part of them getting the permit because the building was old and they wanted to make sure that it was up to code, so they had them do like it might have been a one-time or whatever inspection, but it was a part of the permit.
All right, so there's...
So now with the new building, we should be okay.
So there's a motion before the board. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. And the motion, as I understand, is to grant the permit for a 5-year period to a designated end date with the requirement that the applicant, if the applicant wishes to extend it beyond 5 years, submit a request in writing to the town or the board prior to the expiration date. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any, you abstain?
Abstain,
All right.
yeah.
So 4 in favor, 1 abstention, and the permit is granted subject to those conditions. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for your patience.
Yes.
No worries. Do we have interesting to see?
Worth the wait, right? It's good
Hope
for
you
your
found it
years.
informative.
I am. Interesting. Trying to,
You want to join? Come on, just talk to Scott. There's one here, she'll sign you up. It's a volunteer board.
Yeah, right.
The pay is great.
I already suffer enough on volunteers.
All right,
Thank you very much.
All right. Next item on the agenda is listed as election of officers. I'm going to say to the board what I say every year.
Make a motion to
I'm
make
willing,
president.
I'm willing to do it, but I'm also willing to have anyone else who wants to serve as chair.
I think we get a really good thing going.
Yeah.
Let's give him a raise this year.
Can we put a 5-year term on it?
I'm already demanding a recount. All right, is there a motion on the floor?
Yes. Make a motion to elect Pat as president.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We need to also select a vice chair, and misery loves company, so
That was great.
I would entertain a motion to appoint Mr. Curtin as vice chair.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And continuing, and I'm looking at you, Ms. Baldarelli has served as clerk. It's a very difficult job, as you know.
Very difficult, yeah.
And is there a motion to appoint Diane, to elect Diana as clerk?
Seconded.
Is there a motion? There's a second. All right, all in favor? Any opposed? All right. So we have a slate of offices. The last item is review of the minutes, which I'm sure you have received. Any questions, comments on the minutes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, I think that completes all our business. We do expect business items next month.
We have one.
All right, so the next meeting would be November 12th, 2024. And this meeting is adjourned.